Hello, my name is Marie Contreras and I am the proud owner of Marie C. Pet Care. Nothing is more important than my family, and my pets are part of the family in my house. For the last 5 years, I have dedicated myself to the world of pet care because I am a pet lover at heart. I consider myself an environmentalist, an animal rights activist, and a staunch supporter of the scientific research behind proper animal care and welfare. My videos focus on pet care and tips for having healthy and happy pets. I hope you stick around and enjoy what I have created for you today. In today's video, I'm going to share my adventure in rescuing an orphaned kitten. I will share what I learned and share some things to help you rescue and care for an orphaned feral kitten. Hopefully you can learn from some of my mistakes. Today's video is sponsored by Good Dogs, a foolproof guide for having happy and healthy dogs. Yes, I wrote this book. I don't have any real sponsors yet, but this is a great book. If you have dogs or you know somebody who has a dog, you can find it on Kindle, in paperback on Amazon, and now it's also available on Audible, so you can listen to it while you're driving around. Anyway, back to today's program. It was a blisteringly hot day in September. The forecast was for the temperature to soar to 115 degrees Fahrenheit. As I was walking around the neighborhood on one of my regular dog walks, I heard faint crying from a kitten in the engine compartment of a car that hadn't moved in what appeared to be quite a while. When I first heard the meowing, I was walking 3 large and sometimes aggressive dogs. So I asked a worker on a nearby construction site for help. He could hear the kitten, but he couldn't see it or get to it. To be frank, he was more interested in going back to work also, and he quickly gave up. He was, after all, working, so I would need to come up with a different plan. Since it was so hot, I was worried that the kitten would die in the hot engine compartment. I took the dogs to their home just a few blocks away and picked up cat food, water, and headed back as quickly as possible. When I returned, I could still hear the kitten, but it wasn't as loud. I knocked on neighborhood doors to try to find the owner of the car so that I could pop the hood and hopefully rescue the cat. One of the neighbors asked if I had tried to open the door. Maybe it was unlocked. I didn't want to mess with someone's car, but I was really afraid the cat was dehydrated, overheating, and might not survive. So I figured that it was worth a try. When I pulled on the door handle, to my delight, the door opened, and I quickly popped the hood. I could see the kitten, but it retreated further into the engine, just out of reach. Around this time, another neighbor pulled up and said that he knew the owner of the car and asked what I was doing. I explained about the kitten. He called the owner of the car and parked. Then he went to his trunk, put on some gloves, and came over to help. After many futile attempts, the helpful neighbor tried from several different angles until he was able to grab the tiny little kitten, and then handed it to me and said, "Okay, here's your cat." My cat. I guess I hadn't thought about what I would do if we actually were able to free him from the car. So I loaded him into my car and headed to the vet. Of course, the vet was closed for lunch and would return in a couple of hours, so I brought the tiny, scared kitten home. I was really glad that I didn't have far to drive. The kitten was squirming and trying to escape my grasp. He was small enough to hold with one hand, though, and we were home in just a few minutes. I have 2 kittens and 2 dogs of my own at home already that I wanted to keep safe and healthy. The rescued kitten was covered in fleas, probably had worms, as most kittens do, and surely had not been vaccinated yet. It was also quite unhappy with me and terrified of its new surroundings. I gave it a couple of baths with Dawn dish soap because it seemed too small and young for flea shampoo. Dawn dish soap is supposed to be good for fleas. I guess I would soon find out. It didn't eliminate all of the fleas with the Dawn baths, but there were far fewer. Next, I put the kitten in my bathroom to separate it from my personal pets to keep everybody healthy. My animals were healthy and free of fleas, and I hoped to keep it that way. I put food and water out for the kitten, and I hoped it would be fine in the bathroom while I waited for the veterinarian to finish his lunch and figure out what to do next with this tiny animal. I went back to the bathroom to check on the kitten about 30 minutes later, and the kitten had disappeared. I had no idea how. The door had remained closed. I couldn't believe it. I searched the cupboards. I took everything out of every cabinet and still couldn't find the kitten. As I mentioned earlier, it was very hot this day. I was worn out from my rescue adventure, It took about an hour to free the cat from the car, and I was overheated and very tired. It had been a very hot week, and I wasn't tolerating the heat as well as I usually did. Now, I didn't even know where or how the kitten had escaped. So I gave up for a moment and I tried to take a short nap. Then I heard meowing again. I rushed to the bathroom and I still could not see the kitten. This kept happening. Still no kitten could be seen. I couldn't take the kitten to the vet if I couldn't find it. I was worried because the food and water were out and didn't seem to be touched. I had to go back out of the house to walk a few more dogs. I came home around 5:30 that afternoon and still couldn't find the kitten. I was getting really frustrated and rather worried. I turned off everything in the house that made noise so I could hone in on the sporadic meowing that I could still hear. It sounded like it was coming from the bathroom wall. But how? I got down on my belly and I looked everywhere I could from the kitten's point of view. And then I spotted the problem. Tucked under my bathroom vanity above the baseboard was a small, unfinished hole in the wall between the wall and the vanity that was only visible from this angle on the floor. The hole was about 3 inches square. I had never noticed this bit of unfinished carpentry before now. Surely it was too small for a kitten to fit into. But when I stuck a wooden spoon into the hole, I felt the kitten and I heard it. It was also not going to come out on its own. I was truly afraid that the kitten would die in my bathroom wall. So I gathered tools, saws, my drill, and started to cut a larger hole, careful to not injure the kitten. I felt like I was going to pass out. My hands were starting to tremble and shake. I hadn't felt well all day. I would later find out that I was having problems with my thyroid that made me intolerant of heat and very weak. But I didn't know it at the time. I just knew that I needed help. Several weeks later, I would be diagnosed with hyperthyroidism caused by Graves' disease. All of the weird symptoms were caused by this. I am on medication for this now, and I feel much more like myself, thankfully. Anyway, back to the story. I walked upstairs to my neighbor, who is always drilling something or building something, and I asked for help. I figured he would be the perfect person. He was happy to help, and we have become friends since our little kitten rescue adventure. We freed that little bugger, and I put him in a crate where I could keep a closer eye on him after I bottle fed him. Luckily, he was hungry and ready to settle down. The small kitten was so tiny that I thought he was younger than he actually was. He bit the nipple right off the kitten bottle. His eyes had changed color already too. So he was at least 3 to 8 weeks old, probably on the older side. I mixed the formula into the cat food, and he was happy to eat that by morning. I did some Googling and added a heated pad to the crate, a small disposable litter box, and some water. The crate that I used was for my border collie, so there was plenty of room to be on the heating pad or not. This is important, and I will share why in a little bit. My border collie dog, Betty, loved the little kitty. She has surprised me with her affection for cats. I had no idea until I brought one home how fond she was of them. Very young kittens cannot self-regulate their body temperature, and the queen cat, their mother, keeps them toasty with her body heat. Suppose the queen cannot come back to her kittens. They will die of hypothermia in a relatively short period of time, depending, of course, upon outside temperatures and the kitten's age. If the queen cannot come back to the kitten, they must have a source of warmth. A heating pad works well for this. It is also helpful to keep kittens of similar ages together so that they can snuggle up to each other for warmth. With a heating pad, make sure that they have enough room to get off of it so they don't get overheated. Kitten formula. For very young, abandoned kittens, kitten formula is available at pet food stores. You can buy it in powder form or canned, just like human baby formula. The kitten formula is formulated for kittens, and they need to be fed every 2 to 3 hours. For older kittens with their teeth, which this cat had, kitten food is fine. When I adopted my personal kittens at 8 weeks old, the rescue group recommended having dry food available all day and offering wet kitten food twice a day. Wet food helps kittens stay hydrated because of the added moisture, and often cats have problems with dehydration. With a feral kitten that isn't familiar with cat food yet, mixing in some kitten formula can help get them started eating cat food because they are familiar with formula and the way that it tastes because of their mother's milk. Tiny kittens need to have their bellies massaged after every meal. Their mothers would instinctively lick their bellies to help them urinate and defecate, and she'd clean it up at the same time. Their tiny bodies cannot do this independently for the first few weeks. So if there is no mama, they will die without belly rubs to help them eliminate waste when they are tiny. Once they can eliminate waste on their own, this is no longer necessary. Have a small, shallow box that is short enough that a kitten can climb into it with some kitty litter in it. Cats instinctively know what to do in the kitty litter once they are old enough to crawl around and go potty by themselves. Once the excitement of the day wore off, I posted a photo of the kitten on my social media that night and shared his story. One of my customers and friends was interested in adopting the little guy, and there are days that she says she wishes she could return him to the sender. I know that she's joking though. She and her husband have grown to love the little guy. She had an elderly cat that recently passed away, and the kitten has a very different, very lively disposition. He is quite the character now, and I hear that he runs circles around their house every morning and tries to ride their Cocker Spaniel like a horse. He is healthy, growing, and full of personality. If you need to find a home for a rescued kitten because you cannot keep them, carefully consider the prospective new owner. I rehomed the kitten I found to someone that I personally knew that would provide an excellent home. Always be careful rehoming a pet to a stranger. Adding a rehoming fee will weed out some of the bad characters. You don't want to rescue a pet and then place them in a bad situation. If this seems overwhelming, contact a local rescue organization for help. They are always happy to help. They may need spaces limited for cats, especially in the springtime during the breeding season, but they will give you all the tips that you need, and they will help guide you to make good decisions about how to rehome a cat. And also for the care of cats, if you have run into questions or your cat is acting strangely, you can call rescue groups. And of course, if the cat seems ill, you want to take it to a veterinarian. Young animals are very fragile. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this helps you. Have a great day. If you enjoyed this video, nudge the like button. If you would like to see more like this, consider subscribing. If you would like to read the blog or check out my new book, I'm going to leave links to them in the description. Thank you for watching.